Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, earlier this week, NOAA released its statewide average temperature ranks maps for the month of April, and on the whole, when you put the whole of the lower 48 together, this particular April ranked 54th out of 126 years in terms of temperatures across the whole country. It's an interesting map to look at, given how much of the midsection of the country and parts of the Northeast were under some cooler weather, while the West, and especially down here in Florida, very warm compared to average. Broken down by division, looking specifically at minimum temperatures, it'll be interesting to see how people remember the month of April, because even though you see pretty much a big section of the mid part of the United States showing up cool, look at what happened in, for example, Glasgow, Montana. So beginning of the month, we were extremely cold. Then we went on a big warm up where temperatures were above average, dropped off again, but then had temperatures recover toward, about April 20th, up here around 75, dipped again, and then recovered back up to near 80 before coming back down to where we are now. And you saw a similar pattern like over in Indianapolis. Started off the month with a big warm up through April 6th where temperatures got up again close to 80 degrees. Then mid-month was quite cold before a recovery toward the end of the month before we finished the month, well, with frost and freeze issues now as we get into the month of May. In terms of precipitation, we ranked 57th as a country here out of 126. So overall, it was drier mainly because of how dry parts of the interior sections of the United States were. Wetter than average conditions in parts of the southeast here, getting up into the mid-Atlantic. Broken down again by division, I want to talk about this map specifically because of how wet things were here, and then the drought that had moved to the east and to the south in parts of Texas and Oklahoma. And then we were watching how dry things were, stretching from Colorado through northern Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and South Dakota. But as of late, that particular area has been quite wet. You can see here in parts of Nebraska, getting into South Dakota and over toward even parts of Iowa, recent heavy precipitation over the last week has really changed things up. But do notice how sharp that boundary is right there, where things have continued to be exceptionally dry in parts of southern Kansas, southern Colorado, getting into western Oklahoma, western Texas, and then getting back over to the Four Corner States clear to California. But just to show you how quickly things can change, I want to take you right here to this northeastern section of South Dakota, because yesterday there was a great tweet sent out by Chad Johnson showing in that corner how after having what was several weeks of drier weather, looking for a great plant, had some just torrential rainfall that came through, and this great view here kind of showing how wet the fields are in this area. So this is unfortunately what spring often does to us, gives us a peek at what might be great, and then the atmosphere can open up and just dump enormous amounts of rainfall. So this again in that section of South Dakota. What I wanted to do next was kind of give you just a quick update on what's going on with soil moisture. So we're going to look at two maps here. The one on the left is satellite based. It's looking at root zone soil moisture. It's kind of a drought indicator. And on the right, we're looking at calculated soil moisture anomalies from the CPC. And overall, we do see a similar picture, with this particular area being the region we're going to watch most carefully for being on the drier side of things. That is an area that we've been talking about a lot lately, especially in our long-range analyses, where we've been discussing how if that drought region continues to expand, it gives us a lot of concern later on in the year. But outside of that, you can see where the soil moisture values are quite high, stretching across parts of the Midwest states, getting down into parts of the Mid-South and into the Southeast. So keep a close eye on this map and the evolution of it as we progress through the rest of spring. Now, with the cold temperatures that will be arriving, I want to talk about how 4-inch soil temperatures are projected to change. Remember that soil has about a 50% greater heat capacity or specific heat than air. So as the air temperatures are dropping off of the coming days, this is what's going to happen to the soil temperatures. So this was a snapshot this morning at 7 a.m. This is modeled soil temperatures. This is how things are going to look at 7 a.m. on Saturday. So despite the cold temperatures that are coming into this part of the country, our soil temperatures overall look to be remaining, as you can see here, above freezing. So we're going to hopefully, for that crop that still has its growing point below ground, shield it from potential major damage with the cold temperatures that are coming in. So here's the map we've been watching quite closely over the last week. It's Saturday morning's low temperatures. I've added a new line to this map, and that line is that white one you see snaking through the image. What it does is it kind of delineates where we're going to see above freezing and below freezing temperatures. And there's a substantial portion here of this section of the United States which will be experiencing temperatures below freezing on Saturday morning, challenging all-time records for the day here on May 9th. And it's about a month after the average last frost date. So these bitterly cold temperatures reaching clear down into parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, and then you're going to see in a few moments that it's going to spread even farther to the east there as we work our way into Sunday. Now, I want to show you something quite amazing. This is a view of the trough that's going to be sitting basically over Lake Ontario on Saturday morning. And that trough is quite deep, and I want to explain just something really kind of cool about the depth of the atmosphere. So you probably know that the atmosphere has 4 distinct layers: a troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, and thermosphere. We've all lived in the troposphere. If you've flown commercially, you've been in the stratosphere. If you are in the Navy or the Air Force, maybe you visited the mesosphere, and only people that I know that have visited the thermosphere have also gone out to outer space. Okay, that troposphere, which generally has temperatures decreasing as you ascend, well, the depth of it can change. We typically find the jet stream right at the top of it, about 6 miles above our heads. What causes a change in the depth of that layer is temperature fluctuations. We teach our students an equation called the hypsometric equation that helps us understand that. Well, I went to State College, Pennsylvania, and grabbed a forecast sounding for Saturday morning. And what I want you to see is this is the temperature as it decreases in the troposphere and then begins to warm in the stratosphere. And that right there is called the tropopause, the transition. Its altitude on Saturday will be basically about 20,000 feet above the ground. Now that is amazing, especially when you compare it to what we're going to be seeing later on today in parts of Texas. Now check this out. This map shows us this from the Storm Prediction Center where we're watching for the potential for severe weather today. So parts of the Red River Valley really under the gun for the chances of severe storms. Now this is a forecast sounding for that time period. Where is the tropopause going to be today there? Way up here. And that is right around 12 kilometers, which is roughly going to be around, well, about 40,000 feet in the sky. So much, much, much higher, basically due to the warmth in that destabilized atmosphere. Now, just to put a point on this, earlier this week back on the 4th, we saw severe storms that broke out in this same area. These are the storm reports back on the 4th, 465 reports and some huge hail, which requires very deep tropospheres. We then watched the next day as that severe weather moved over here into parts of South Carolina. All right, let me show you a forecast sounding that came out of these storms right here. So watch them pop. Now, those storms were very deep in the atmosphere, and we can actually tell you how tall they were. Watch that again as those storms built right there on that outflow boundary. Boom, okay? Well, from Dallas-Fort Worth, take a look at it. The tropopause was sitting way up here. That was the top of those storms, sitting somewhere around 44,000 feet. So we watched the depth of the atmosphere change dramatically given, the thickness, which is governed by where those troughs and ridges are. That's why I talk so much about troughs and ridges in my forecast videos. Okay, the point of all of this, where that deep trough will be setting up shop over the next few days through at least Sunday, we are going to be seeing this section of the United States showing a lot of these freeze watches and freeze warnings and frost advisories as these temperatures really hit rock bottom. Now, elsewhere across the country today, and this again is the all hazards weather map for today, we do have red flag warnings down in New Mexico and parts of Colorado. We do have frost and freeze warnings that are out for parts of the Snake River Valley, and elsewhere around the country we're dealing with high wind watches and some issues here with some stronger winds in parts of South Carolina as well. So what's going on? We'll take a look at those temperatures again. This is minimum temperatures for tomorrow morning. And what we're going to do from there is go right back into Saturday. Like I said, this is going to challenge some all-time records in and around this section of the United States. On Sunday, my concern now becomes for parts of the Mid-Atlantic and parts of the Carolinas, where the potential exists as you get further up into the Piedmont here and right up into parts of central Virginia, where temperatures could drop off below freezing as well, which would be an extremely late frost event. Meanwhile, the western part of the United States is in the middle of a heat wave. Well, this will be the true depth of the cold this weekend, and the pattern begins to moderate from Monday. Again, minimum temperatures with anomalies shaded. Tuesday, next Wednesday, and as we get out to that time period, we're really going to start to see the pattern moderating. So like we talked about for the last couple of weeks, this was going to break right after the 9th and 10th, and this will be the recovery by the time we get into midweek next week. Now, before I come back to a longer term discussion on temperatures, let's at least take a look at what we're going to be seeing in terms of precipitation. There's a low pressure system coming out of Montana that will eventually move its way clear to the northeast by the time we get into early morning on Saturday. And as that system pulls through later on today, we see the rain spreading out ahead of it in parts of Wyoming, Montana, getting into South Dakota, Nebraska, even all the way down to Kansas. Now, through the afternoon and evening hours, the tail end of this, we're going to watch right in through this area where, remember, we had our greatest risk for severe weather. And so while light rain spreads to the north and east of it over here in parts of Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, we're going to keep a close eye on this particular region for the potential for strong to severe storms. Well, as that system in the early morning hours on Friday spreads into the Ohio River Valley here, we do have to be on the lookout for a brief changeover to some wet snowflakes potentially on the northern side of this. But that main frontal squall line through early Friday morning passes down into parts of Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and Texas. And we're going to watch again here Friday afternoon even for the chance for some strong storms. But I imagine a lot of you are watching the blue color showing up in parts of the Ohio River Valley and eventually into Pennsylvania and into the Northeast. Now, the NAM model seems to be the most aggressive with this snow. And so we're going to watch for the changeover briefly to some wet snowflakes as we work our way into the day on Friday afternoon and evening. And that's going to transition here on the day, into the overnight hours on Friday, potentially getting, well, close to the coast. Now, it's a struggle to get an accurate forecast on snowfall in May. The models traditionally don't handle it well, and they most certainly get the liquid to snow ratio incorrect. But I want to show you what is forecast right now by the National Digital Forecast Database for snow. Let's just look over here, and you notice that they're not putting down snow in this area and keeping it primarily into the interior of New England. Also notice the snow that is coming back into parts of North Dakota, and if you didn't see that, it's going to show up right here at the end of this forecast with the next low coming. Look at that. See, it's coming right out of Saskatchewan into North Dakota. Because of its arrival early in the morning on Saturday, could get some light snow that spreads into this area. So to see the rest of that, let's go over to our European model. Playing this one forward, let's pause it here. We've seen through Friday evening getting into Saturday morning. And at that point, it's this big area of higher atmospheric pressure right in through here that's going to allow the skies to clear, the winds to calm down, and the temperatures to bottom out. It'll be interesting to see if some of the stronger winds here, which will be coming out of the north, will allow the temperatures on Saturday morning to really get down there below freezing. But certainly under the calmer conditions you see here, we'll get that. So here's our next low we're going to watch coming through the Dakotas on Saturday morning. Getting into Saturday evening here, spreading across parts of the eastern Dakotas, getting over to Minnesota, Iowa, and then even by Sunday morning coming through Illinois, Wisconsin, and eventually over to the eastern Corn Belt. At the same time that that's occurring, watch the Bay of Campeche down here. We do have a system that's going to move through and just slam into southern Florida, bringing in some very, very heavy rainfall. That's going to be the primary threat from this particular system coming out of the tropics. Okay, so here we are on Sunday evening. Now working away into Monday morning, and higher pressure tends to take over into this area early next week. But as the pattern changes, we're going to see high pressure systems slide off to the east here, and that's really going to work into next week at returning Gulf moisture. And the whole pattern at that point begins to change, and instead of having northwest flow digging into a deep trough here, we're going to push that trough off to the north and east out into the Canadian Maritimes and the North Atlantic, and southwest flow aloft is going to resume in its place. So really quickly, let's take a look at how much snow we're expecting. The operational European model is seeing in this area the potential for quite a bit, but remember, we're not going to be able to use a 10-to-1 snow ratio in May. So we may be really over-predicting that amount as you look out here into this time period, but that's where we may get some snow, also in central Wisconsin and Michigan as well, as we look out over the next few days. And do notice that the European model, while it does maybe put down some snowflakes, is not looking at any accumulation in that area of the Ohio River Valley. Okay, So from there, how much total accumulated precipitation is the Euro expecting through the next week? Well, this is just a snapshot of those numbers here. And we're going to watch again the system coming through here and the heavy rain potentially from some severe weather there, as well as that tropical disturbance that cuts through parts of Florida here. Do notice the model is trying to keep this section of the country, which as you saw was very wet in April, over on the dry side of things as we look out over the next week. And just to show you the comparison between the European and the GFS, here is the GFS, which is much wetter in through this corridor than the European is. So we'll keep a very close eye on those total accumulated precipitation amounts as we work our way through this next week. As we get into week 2, this is the change. The major trough is kicked out. Behind it, we do have another reinforcing shot of cold air, but it's primarily going to stay in Canada. Heights have been building in the parts of the eastern part of the United States, and then this will be the feature I want to watch carefully, because we're going to watch the flow of the jet stream move its way over to something that does, well, flow coming out of the southwest. And with ridging building here, that's going to open up the Gulf of Mexico to the west of that ridge and bring in that moisture. And eventually, during the climatological peak of activity in terms of severe weather, we're going to be opening the atmosphere up for business for strong to severe storms in the central part of the United States. So this is week 2 from the European model. This gets us out to the 21st. You can see the presence of that trough increasing precipitation across the west coast. And then you can see the southwest flow coming across the United States, once again keeping this whole region on the wetter side of things moving forward. And again, this is primarily going to be coming here in the form of your more normal but active severe weather in the midsection of the country. As we discussed in yesterday's long-range analysis, it will be critical for us to see how much precipitation makes it into that area I just shaded, which you know from the beginning is currently sitting in drought conditions. If we can help that area recover in moisture, that will be critical for our later summer temperature and precipitation patterns. And just to show you how the models have been honing in on this, I've been showing you this week. The CFS is also in tune with an increase toward normal severe weather activity. And our own severe weather index, as we play this out, getting past the pattern at the end of this weekend, here we go, watch into late next week. See the environment improving in the midsection of the United States. This again is our thunderstorm index here. It's improving at that time period, increasing the chances of seeing more normal May-like severe weather in the midsection of the country. All right. Okay, from there, let's talk about temperatures in the long term. We know that as we look at day 5 through 10, we've moderated these temperatures, but still going to be on the cooler side of things, at least until we get out to about a week from now. Okay, so the pattern's breaking after this weekend, but the cooler air is going to hang around. After that, we can see the models are really recovering in the day 10 to 15 time period, such that the end here of May is going to be on the much warmer side of things across a big section of the United States, with a return over toward normal, maybe even slightly cooler than average temperatures in California, as the overall jet stream pattern, remember, digs back into a trough in that particular region. Okay, from there, what I want to do is I want to just tell you, go watch my long-range update from yesterday. We talked about the new outlook for June, July, August. We had a discussion about these 4 key regions and what they're going to mean for our summer temperature and precipitation patterns. And just to give you a quick glimpse at what I discussed, this is what June, July, August looks like from the European model. We discussed what might be happening in the west versus the central part of the United States and what would need to take place here to get us over to a hotter, drier pattern. Okay, so we talked about that. And again, we talked about what the monsoon might do and how currently the models are keeping much of the Corn Belt on the wetter side of things. And we also discussed the activity here right along the U.S. coast for increased hurricane activity. So please go watch that, yesterday's long-range forecast, all right? To finish this up, I want to take you abroad and talk about soil moisture anomalies and recent precipitation, especially in the Black Sea region. Now, the CPC gauge data shows us, and I'll just kind of highlight it here, that this section right here of southeastern Ukraine getting into this part of the Russian wheat belt has been dry over the last 30 days or so. Their soil moisture anomaly map, which is over there on the right, does show that much of Ukraine is still much drier than normal. Well, if you slide even a little bit farther to the east than that, look here. This is kind of between the Black Sea and Caspian Sea. We still continue to see dry conditions in this area and this area as well. Well, the forecast moving forward brings in a pretty big cold snap to that area as we work our way out to day 5 through 10. And that's going to bring in some unseasonably cold weather into Ukraine and the whole Black Sea growing area. And we also see that during that time period, the models have as of late dropped off the wetter than average conditions that have been forecast. So we see some drier conditions now in that part of Ukraine and Russia. Keep an eye on that. Let's do the same thing for South America. I have on the left Brazil. Remember, we've been watching drought conditions here, and in Argentina you can see getting up toward Paraguay drier here, and then in and around Santa Fe relatively dry as well when we look at soil moisture anomalies. Looking at the forecast moving forward, again the models have backed off in southern Brazil, Rio Grande do Sul, Paraná, with the upcoming precipitation forecast, while keeping the northern part of Brazil's growing areas over on the near average to slightly wetter than average bias. For those folks that are harvesting a crop in Argentina, the drier conditions will be good, but for the crop that still needs to finish, it's going to need more rain. So we might get a mixed report out of Argentina moving forward. With that, I'll go ahead and wrap this one up. I hope you all have a great rest of your week and weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.